Germany's most well-respected automotive industry publication or media source, Automobilewoche, has reported that, well, German car manufacturers, BMW, Mercedes, Audi, Porsche, Volkswagen, they're aware that they are getting their butts handed to them. They're getting absolutely spanked by China. They're aware that China's car market is, in fact, guys, I've been underreporting the size of it. It was just over 31 million cars sold in 2024. But the entire global car market was only around 80 million. So that's actually closer to, well, not far off being 40% of the entire global car market. As you can see, that is extremely important to these manufacturers. Now, I actually have a chart here showing you just how important that is. The revenue, right? These revenue numbers have dropped drastically for these German manufacturers, but this shows you just how important the Chinese car market is. Look at these numbers. BYD, number one, with $58.1 billion US dollars in revenue from China in 2024. Second place in all of China was Mercedes-Benz, 42.5 billion. Volkswagen, 42 billion. BMW, 32.7 billion. Tesla, 22.3 billion. So you can see here, these figures are insanely large. We're talking literally German car makers made more than $150 billion in revenue in China in 2024. Now, that figure was even higher in previous years. Really gives you an idea of just how crucial this market is. Now, Automobilewoche is saying that these car manufacturers in Germany, they have a plan, a dubious plan, I'd say, but they have a plan on how they're going to win back market share. Volkswagen says it's going to increase its sales in China by millions by the end of the decade. Now, investors aren't convinced, but here's what they're saying in Germany. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the channel. I'm Sam Evans. You're watching the Electric Viking. Great to have you with us. Guys, I got an angry email yesterday saying that I should not say anything negative about legacy automakers. In fact, it said to me that the problem is Tesla and BYD. They're the problem. If Tesla and BYD were gone, the entire automotive industry would just naturally move to electric cars. It would all be saved. Everything would be wonderful. That's what that email said. What do you guys think about that? I'm intrigued to know. The downward trend for German manufacturers on the Chinese market continues, says Automobilewoche. Sports car manufacturer Porsche reported a nearly 30% drop in sales in the first 9 months of the year. And I believe about 40% of Porsche dealerships in China shut down or went bankrupt. So that's a shocking result. Only 43,000 vehicles were sent to China. This means that the once largest market is falling behind North America and Europe. Traditionally, right, German car manufacturers, they made cars in Germany. And people in China thought, well, these are premium cars. We like the badge and we like the cars. And this is status. You know, you make it. If you make it in China, you buy the car. I can tell you now, it's a huge priority for people in China. Often people, before they buy the house, they'll buy the car. Because, not everyone, but a lot of people will do this, because it's about impressions. It's very important for business deals, for perception of how people treat you, is to have the car with the right badge. Now, unfortunately, for these German manufacturers, people don't really see it that way in China anymore. BMW, Audi, and Mercedes-Benz also suffered losses. BMW saw a drop of 30% in the third quarter and 13% for the year. Mercedes fell 10%, and Volkswagen's brands fell by 10% as well. But here's the difficult part. The number of German cars made in Germany has fallen much faster than that. The majority now of the cars that are being German cars, so-called German brands that are being bought in China, they're actually made in China. They're not made in Germany anymore. And the reason for this is, well, it's so much cheaper to make them in China. However, what this presents is a bit of an issue because BMW, Mercedes-Benz, Audi, Volkswagen, none of them fully own their brands. They only own 50% of their own brands in China. So that means that these basically joint venture partners, Chinese car companies, who also have their own brands that they're now selling worldwide, are making 50% of any profits or revenue. So those revenue figures I shared with you before, they're not really accurate, are they? Because that revenue has to be shared with Chinese companies. A little bit of a Trojan horse to some degree. The problems are well known, says Automobilewoche. When it comes to electric vehicles in particular, wealthy Chinese customers now prefer to buy domestic brands like Neo, Xpeng, Zeekr, and others, even BYD as well. And these are often one step ahead, says Automobilewoche, especially when it comes to software and infotainment, and they better meet customers' tastes. And yeah, I mean, the sales are basically speaking to that, aren't they? Handling and chassis, the great strength of German combustion engine models, are playing an increasingly smaller role in the age of software-defined vehicles and e-mobility. In China, more than 1 in 4 newly registered vehicles is already an EV. Given the tough competition, the vehicles are also usually significantly cheaper than a Porsche Taycan, a Mercedes EQS, or a BMW i7. And part of the problem is that consumers are looking at the specs of these cars. They're saying, okay, Mercedes EQS, does it have advanced driving? But does it have real level 3 or real level 4 advanced driving technology? No, it doesn't. I mean, Mercedes makes claims that it does, but as you know, from if you've been watching the channel, my video I did, there was a test of this in the United States, and there was, in a 17-minute video I watched, on a straight road with no traffic lights, no intersections, nothing, the Mercedes-Benz had to follow another car the entire way, and it had 44 interventions in 17 minutes. So Mercedes doesn't have very good automated driving. The media might be telling you they do, but that is a myth. So consumers have become aware of this, and many have regretted their purchase decisions of Mercedes EVs. And that's one of the reasons why Mercedes EV sales crashed worldwide in 2024. It's not because people don't want EVs. It's because the product that was sold previously, bad word of mouth, and basically, what are you paying for? What are you paying this premium for? You're not paying for a premium product. That's the problem. However, the other problem is even worse than that. I mean, look at the most advanced EVs from these German companies. They don't have anywhere near the charging speeds of Chinese brands. Chinese brands, for example, Zeekr, right? Charging speed on their cars, you can get 600 kilowatt fast charging now. There is no German company that even comes anywhere remotely close to that. Even my Xpeng G6 outperforms every single model that BMW, that Audi, and that Mercedes-Benz manufacture in terms of charging speed. The awareness is there, says the German media. In order to make up for the loss of market share and finally play a significant role, especially in EVs, the German manufacturers have already adapted their strategies. Now, German brands have admitted to the fact that everything will be electric. They're saying that within 10 years, the entire world will be buying primarily electric cars. Now, even if you're watching this channel and you don't agree with that, it doesn't really matter what your personal feelings are. That's what the German companies believe. And they've said this a number of times. So their perception is that if they're falling behind on these EVs, that's a problem because they're falling behind on the products that they think are the future of the automotive industry. In recent months, local development centers have been strengthened and significantly expanded in order to better reflect customer needs, says Automobilewoche. But at the same time, manufacturers in Germany are suffering a cash crunch and they're having to fire staff. For 2.5 billion euros, Volkswagen is essentially building a Chinese Wolfsburg in Anhui. Since China is by far the most important market for the German manufacturers and will continue to offer growth opportunities in the future, they don't want to give it up without a fight. So they have an interesting strategy, which I think may possibly work. At least it will mean they won't completely die in China. I think it will, give them that guarantee. Audi has joined forces with a Volkswagen joint venture partner, state-owned conglomerate, SAIC, to develop new models at a rapid pace over the next few years. In fact, Audi are even debadging the cars of the Audi 4 logo ring. They think that it's not a positive anymore. I mean, that's drastic, isn't it? Audi will begin series production of the A6 and Q6 e-tron at its own plant in Changchun at the end of the year. These are brand new models that will be launched on the market and represent a major leap, they say, in terms of range and efficiency. Now, it's yet to be seen how good they'll be. But that is apparently not enough for Audi. The first 3 models from the SAIC partnership are to cover the compact and mid-size segments. The first model is to be presented in November this year, and the market launch is planned for the second half of 2025. Audi models without a 4-ringed logo. This is what the German media are saying. Hang a minute, isn't Audi perceived to be good outside of Germany? Well, with the products from the cooperation, Audi wants to focus on the younger generation, and the design and digital ecosystem should be geared towards them accordingly. In other words, the younger generation don't give two shits about the Audi brand. The reason for this is that Audi has an image problem in China, says Automobilewoche, and is now perceived as a government car. According to rumors, the new electric car might not have the four rings. Well, actually not rumors, but that's been supported by facts. But it'll just have an Audi logo. Don't know what that means though. I think it's a new logo that we've seen floating about. The new model family, which will be produced at the SAIC or SAIC, Volkswagen and Anting in Shanghai, is intended to make the brand more attractive again. Here's the big issue with that. The big problem is the platform Audi will be using, people will know it is manufactured by SAIC or SAIC. They know that it is, and that's what Audi have admitted. It won't be an Audi platform. In other words, the entire skateboard chassis, the motors, the batteries, that's coming from SAIC and probably CATL as well. So these two Chinese conglomerates are producing basically the primary drivetrain of an Audi car. The question I have then is, why would you not just buy the same vehicle, essentially, the same chassis from SAIC for a much lower price? It doesn't really make sense. That this strategy could backfire because consumers will know this. They'll know that IM Motors, right, which is owned by SAIC, is their premium EV brand. They'll know that they can get basically the same car from them for a much cheaper price. So I'm not convinced that younger consumers, if they don't value the Audi brand today, are going to value it in future simply because they're using a platform made by SAIC. Doesn't really make sense. Mercedes is not relying on a large partnership, but on consistent localization. In addition to expanding the development center in Beijing, Mercedes opened a new software hub in Shanghai this year. If the Chinese customer wants to sing karaoke in the car, we can give it to them, said Mercedes boss Ola Kalanius at the Beijing Auto Show. Now, this is probably a reference to the fact that years ago, Tesla actually installed karaoke in their cars in China. And they sold microphones, and it was the best-selling product in Tesla's history. The microphones sold out within 15 minutes, and they sold like 50,000 of them. So popular. It's taken Mercedes-Benz 2 years to go, oh, maybe that's a good idea. Anyhow, just a few months later, Mercedes CEO announced a new billion-dollar investment in China. For the first time, Mercedes will also localize the popular GLE SUV in China. Until now, the model was only manufactured in the US plant in Tuscaloosa for all markets. What that means is that those Mercedes-Benz vehicles being made in Tuscaloosa in the United States will no longer be exported to China anymore. Mercedes, they hope for an MMA platform to save the company, potentially. Like many other models, it will have an extended wheelbase and special infotainment options for Chinese customers. Mercedes assumes that SUVs will be in greater demand in the future. But Automobilewoche says that the GLE is still a classic combustion engine model that can only be electrified as a plug-in hybrid. It's a bridging gap car. Consumers may see it that way. Mercedes is currently having the biggest problems with its pure electric cars, where there is a fierce price war and customers are absolutely not prepared to pay a premium for vehicles like the EQS in China. Like I said before, Mercedes-Benz EV sales fell by more than 30% worldwide in 2024. Fortunately for BMW, their sales grew significantly of EVs. Mercedes is planning or pinning its great hopes on the MMA platform, which is to be introduced in China after Europe in 2025. The first model to be launched is the CLA, which, thanks to a new electric drivetrain and improved cell chemistry in the battery, will get around 750 kilometers of range and recharge apparently 400 kilometers of range, so about 240 miles of range, in 15 minutes. Now, when that vehicle will be unveiled or built in China, I don't know. But by the time it is, to be honest, it will already be a bit behind its direct rivals. I mean, BYD already has batteries that can charge and a new architecture, enabling charging of their cars in around 10 minutes. And Zeekr do as well. Numerous manufacturers do now. That's pretty normal. The company's own operating system is intended to make it easier to adapt to Chinese infotainment and enable remote updates at any time. The CLA must show whether Mercedes can get back on par with Chinese manufacturers, say German media. What about BMW? Well, actually, BMW's EV sales have been a surprise hit around the world, at least anyway. As a result, BMW was the only car manufacturer out of the premium manufacturers in Germany to not really show any sales decline in 2024. Only a very small one, 1 or 2%. BMW is doing something similar with its new class EVs, which also marks a milestone, they say, in technological development. Production of the first vehicles, a compact SUV and a sedan in the BMW 3 Series segment, is planned to begin in 2026 at the Dadong plant in Shenyang province. Now, that's still, another year or so away. BMW, though, has invested the equivalent of 2.5 billion euros in this. The planned investment not only underlines our confidence in China's long-term economic prospects, but also in the innovative strength of our Chinese partners, says Oliver Zips. BMW are relying heavily on their Chinese partners for the development of this new platform. Special variants of the models are being developed for China alone. In 2022, BMW took over its joint venture partner Brilliance completely. It's the only legacy automaker outside of Tesla that actually owns one of its businesses completely in China. The new class is intended to achieve a breakthrough in the electric market, where there has so far been no way around the local OEMs. For example, Xiaomi is offering its much acclaimed debut car, the SU7, at an entry-level price of 28,000 euros, according to ADAC. Other brands also tend to operate in this price segment, even if they're perceived as being premium cars. Xiaomi's new SU7 is definitely perceived as a premium car in China. As a result, its sales have been astronomical. The cheapest version of the BMW i3 starts at just under 50,000 euros, meaning it's nearly double the price of Xiaomi's SU7. And, well, I don't think there's many consumers in China that think it's worth paying double for a BMW, well, the cheapest version of the i3 versus an SU7 from Xiaomi. Now, apparently, there are about to be big discounts on almost all of BMW's electric models, says Automobilewoche. However, BMW are facing one problem that its rival brands from Germany are not. The electric Mini models in China from the joint venture with Great Wall Motors, which BMW announced in 2019, are exported to Europe. So BMW owns the Mini brand, but Mini's EVs are built in China. This means that BMW will also be affected by punitive tariffs when they are introduced in Europe. There is also said to be dissatisfaction with the quality of the vehicles from the joint venture. This makes the success of the new class all the more important from BMW from 2025 onwards. Clearly, as you can see, because of this joint venture, the fact that they're building these EVs with a Chinese company, or predominantly that Chinese company is actually building them, BMW can't really control the destiny of Mini. They can influence it, but they can't ultimately control it completely. After the Volkswagen brand dominated the Chinese market for many years, things have been going downhill for a few years. The variety of models is almost unmanageable given the confident joint venture partners SAIC and FAW. But success has not been forthcoming recently, says Automobilewoche. Gone are the days when the Jetta was the vehicle of choice for taxi drivers. Across all sub-brands, the Volkswagen Group's market share in China has fallen around 19% within 4.5 years. The targets are now correspondingly modest. Volkswagen is aiming for a 15% share of new registrations by 2030. Volkswagen CEO Oliver Blume admitted in the run-up to the Beijing Auto Show that the company cannot currently keep up with the leaders in the rapidly growing Chinese market for electric cars. But it has, of course, decided, what I think was a very astute decision, to make a joint venture partnership with XPeng. Investments in a new Chinese research center and its partnership with XPeng are expected to bring about improvements in its software and also in the efficiency of its electric cars. Both manufacturers are jointly developing the China Electrical Architecture, called the CEA, with XPeng contributing its expertise in the area of software in particular, where Volkswagen has some catching up to do. Now, the other big advantage that XPeng has over the Volkswagen Group is it manufactures its electric cars using gigacasting techniques. It's much cheaper, it's much faster. It means their cars are lighter, they're more efficient, and it also means that hundreds and hundreds of parts are reduced into essentially one. In fact, two, because there's one large gigacasting for the front and one large one for the back. This is one of the big advantages that Chinese automakers have over Western legacy automakers. They can make cars much, much, much faster. The cost compared to MEB-based vehicles are expected to fall by 40%. That gives you an idea of how much cheaper it is to make an electric car if you are a Chinese EV manufacturer who manufactures one very efficiently, like Xiaomi and XPeng do, or Tesla as well. The first locally produced models are expected to come into the market in 2026. Volkswagen China board member Ralph Brandstatter sees this partnership as a decisive factor for a glorious future. High economic efficiency and a fast pace of development are crucial for our competitiveness in China's dynamic market environment. This means we are taking on a leading role in the age of intelligently connected vehicles. Now, that's a pretty bold claim. It's yet to be seen if that will actually be true. Currently, Volkswagen's EV technology is clearly behind its direct rivals and by a fair margin in China. Personally, I think all of this is a pretty tough ask. Can these German automakers save their bacon in China? I think no. I think their market share will decline by around 70 to 80% over the next 5 to 10 years. Now, ultimately, I suspect they'll still exist to some degree in the country, but eventually, I believe, probably will leave. I don't think it's going to be a sustainable long-term venture for them. I think that they'll have to do a similar thing to what Mitsubishi and Jeep and other automakers have done in China recently. Why is this? Well, these companies are bloated, they have businesses everywhere, they're inefficient, their factories are producing way less cars than they should be to actually make these cars affordably. Their production lines are old and outdated. They don't use gigacasting. They don't use many different new manufacturing techniques. They don't have their own advanced battery technologies. They really don't have the best software in their EVs. They don't really have anything. And the Chinese companies are innovating faster and they're willing to sell at a loss for as long as it takes. Plus, they don't have enormous debts saddling them. Keep in mind, these German automakers have huge debts that are probably going to get worse. They have enormous legacy automaker factories existing in Germany, massive debt repayments needed to continue paying for these factories. Staff there are expensive. It's really like a noose hanging around their necks.